Hello and welcome back to the Who's He Podcast YouTube channel. First off, sorry for no output over the last week or so. I've not been that well, so there was no review of last week's Mandalorian or The Bad Batch. I will review the final episodes of The Bad Batch over the coming weeks, but this episode, I'll be looking at the latest episode of The Mandalorian, Guns for Hire. Now, obviously I haven't passed comment on the previous episode, but I will say this. It looked great, it brought back Gory and Shard, Mandalorians have returned to Navarro, and it appears that Mandalorians have sprung Moff Gideon before he could reach trial. So, picking up from last week, Bo-Katan, Din and Grogu head off to Plaza 15 to find the Mandalorians that Bo-Katan once led. Basically, Axe Walls is now leading the Mandalorians are the Guns for Hire of the title, and are currently hired by the rulers of this planet, Captain Bombardier and the Duchess. But before these rulers allow Bo and Din to meet the Mandalorians, they have to help out with the droid problem. Yes, this planet is full of ex-Imperial and battle droids that have been reprogrammed, but some have gone rogue. So, another mission of the week then. With only 2 episodes to go, a mission of the week episode is somewhat surprising. But I can only compare this episode to a side quest in a computer game. Doesn't really add anything to the plot and gives the player a little reward at the end before going back to the main story again. And to be honest, there is not an awful lot I can say that is positive. The side mission was pointless and the face-off between Bo-Katan and Axe Walls was over pretty quickly at the end. All the way through, I never felt there was any genuine threat or peril for any of the protagonists. It just felt, well, really flat. But my main problem with this episode is the stunt casting this week. First off, we have Lizzo as the Duchess and Jack Black as Captain Bombardier. Now, I'm not that familiar with Lizzo. She's not an artist I would listen to, and neither is that style of music. However, I felt she gave a pretty good performance. It's certainly better than most pop stars that try their hand at acting. But Jack Black? I'm sorry, I'm somewhat biased when it comes to Jack Black, as I can't stand him. He's one of those actors who is just themselves in everything they do. So I never felt I was watching an ex-Imperial officer who was now running a planet. I was just watching Jack Black. The other famous face popping up this week was Christopher Lloyd, playing Commissioner Hellgate, Plaza F-15's head of security and also this week's villain. And while his motivation to reprogram the droids was a little bit meh, he's a separatist, it was nice, however, to hear Count Dooku's name mentioned again, and only made me wish that Christopher Lee was still around. So, dropping 3 famous faces into the mix this week took me right out of the episode. I found it too distracting and somehow, well, less believable. If perhaps we just had Lizzo in this episode, who to be fair was one of the few high points, it may have worked better. But all 3 was just too much. What also irked me this week was Din Djarin himself. After seemingly getting over his mistrust of droids over the previous seasons, this episode sees him right back at square one, kicking and threatening droids like it was going out of fashion. And this character regression seems to be for one purpose only, comedic effect. When you take your hero and make him an utter dick just for that purpose, it does make you wonder what the hell the writers were thinking. It was just, well, bizarre. In fact, this whole episode is bizarre. In one of the most bizarre moments, the Duchess makes Grogu a knight, despite doing naffle when sitting the episode out. Why do this? Probably because they thought it would look cool. Also this week, the usually wonderful psychorama backgrounds looked half-rendered, in particular the scene where Bo, Din and were walking with Captain Bombardier and the Duchess. It looked like the 4 characters were just dropped into a computer game and it just looked odd. It really wasn't up to their usual standards. Now, there is one scene in this episode that I called out as far back as episode 2, and that is Bo-Katan is the rightful owner of the Dark Sabre. Yes, as Din lost the sabre to that weird cyborg, Bo-Katan got it back and killed the one-eyed beastie, so technically it is now hers. And it's not often I'm right about such things, but I'll be dining out on this for a good many years to come. So, while some quarters are disappointed that Bo and Din didn't fight in order for her to get the Dark Sabre back, was that really ever on the cards? Well, I don't think it ever was. They had to find a way for Din to give up the Dark Sabre without him and Bo fighting, and I think this is a satisfying resolution to that little conundrum. So we end with Bo-Katan now wielding the Dark Sabre and leading the Mandalorians once again. But where next? Are the Mandalorians that Bo now leads the very ones that sprung Moff Gideon from his prison transport? Well, it looks very likely and very convenient and a little boring. I never thought I'd hear myself say this, but I'm getting bored. Maybe I'm misremembering previous seasons, and I know there are plenty of Mission of the Week episodes, but, well, none of them come across as boring. Now, there has been plenty of setup this season, and I'm getting tired of it. And with only 2 more episodes to go, I can only envisage a mad and messy dash to the finish, and that would be a real shame for a show that I used to think was unmissable. But lastly, isn't Axe Walls a bloody silly name? You can tell that name was dreamt up by an American, because if it was a British writer, that name would be watered right down. Chopper Foxes, anyone?